How you doing, Sebastian? Well, I guess we only have 3 minutes. This isn't an open debate. So I'll just go ahead and just start this off as we always do. And that's that I support the legalization of prostitution as a human rights issue. I will prove it's a net positive that can be achieved through open regulation, which and that it can be ethical in an ethical way. And with that, I have contention points, but before I move along, I want to say a couple of things. And the first is that I do favor legalization as opposed to depenalization or complete decriminalization, as I'll explain. So basically, I just think it should be legal so it's regulated, and that is one of the central arguments. And then also I want to point out from the economic standpoint, because I know there's a lot of libertarians who enjoy these debates, and of course feminists too. But also I want to say that there's no way to stop the demand here. So there's a demand, and there's no way to stop it. And I'll get to that in my contention points. The first contention point is that I believe that this is a way to stop human trafficking, because going back to the economic side of the demand, I think this is the best way to approach that, and we'll get to that. But the second is that it will liberate the workers into the mainstream, so there'll be less violence and they'll have labor rights. I also believe that it will control disease and will help control narcotics, actually. And I think it will help the disabled, and that it's a victimless crime. So why not do it? So I'll elaborate on those further in just a moment. But first, since I only have not too much time, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Sebastian and see what his contentions are to this argument.
Okay, so you said what is you basically said it's a human rights basis. You said it should be legal but regulated, and you said that legalizing prostitution would stop the demand, and you also made the assertion that it's a way to stop human trafficking and less violence rates and less violence would occur and labor rates will increase because this is a victimless crime. Now, these are all assertions that I completely am at odds with. Making the demand, like turning this into a service industry. I mean, you do not, if anything, you will only increase the violence towards women. Hence, now men and women, for that matter, because you can prostitute males too, they'll become more aggressive towards sex, and they'll become something that they rely on like a drug in order to reach satisfaction. And you talk about I mean, look, think about the public health that can occur. Most of the issues with Africa, the way I see it, with the AIDS epidemic and HIV and STDs, there's slavery where actually in parts of Africa where women are raped at a rapid rate, and to contribute to this sexual revolution that will come about with this legalization of prostitution, I don't see the connection with how with how victimless crimes will become a result. I mean, when you just glorify this thing, if anything, I ought to expect my little sister to be walking in the street and be raped by a male. I mean, I really don't see how the logic adds up, Julian. And hopefully, when you continue, you can just provide your basis.
Okay, so it seems like your contention here is that it will not help. You believe that it will not help, and you go back to my talking about violence, and you allude to rape, and you kind of dismiss victimless crimes. There are people who will claim that legalizing prostitution would lower the rate of rape. That's not really an argument that I want to anchor my argument on, but I think it falls into the criteria that I'll give. And as far as the violence goes, the thing is, where this is legal in Nevada, it actually has stopped violence, and and even in the Netherlands, it actually wasn't completely legal until about 2000. And because of the violence against the workers, that was one of the reasons that it finally became above ground and they were to file a tax return. They actually filed on their tax return, and they have all these other services. So that kind of gets into my. So I like to get back to my contention points, and of course the first contention point is human trafficking. But I think that really what we're talking about here, we have the opportunity to liberate the workers. So there would be less violence because this is regulated. I'm saying this should be regulated. I'm saying that the government should actually it's like alcohol. They should actually be able to go in there and see what they're doing and move the market that way for it, as opposed to it being a deregulated system. A system where there's just no way of knowing who's human trafficking, and there's no way of knowing these things where there is a way to know it. So I think that there's a real problem here and a real solution that your argument was just kind of ignoring by saying that you don't think that it would stop the violence. It absolutely would. Has in Nevada and has in the Netherlands, and I think it certainly could in the United States, if not everywhere.
I mean, according to what statistic? And how long has it been legalized in Nevada? These are all things that we must measure and questions that must be answered in order to validate your point. Because I'm a firm believer that just because something starts off seemingly on the right path and seem to produce positive results doesn't mean long term it will be it will always be that way. You know, some things it's not until later on, like as like 5 or 6 or a couple years pass, that you really begin to see the full effects of something. So if you're measuring the successes of legalizing prostitution in what you say as Nevada, I mean, I have yet to have anything to convince me that this is actually true. But if you can just verify it, I mean, I'll probably look into it after the debate also. But I mean, how many years are you measuring this by? When was it legalized in Nevada? These are all questions that must be answered in order to really push your point forward. And I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Yeah, that's so funny that you mentioned Nevada, Sebastian, because I don't know a year offhand, but the legalized status of prostitution in Nevada, that goes all the way back to the gold rush. So that goes all the way back. You know, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's in the late 1800s. I'm not going to get on my phone and look up a year, but I encourage the audience and judges to do that. Now, as far as the regulations go, it is fully regulated, and it has been there for many, much more than, I think you said a couple of years. It has been for much more than a couple of years. So in the case of Nevada, you're saying that it wouldn't play out on a timetable. We actually have seen this on a timetable, and it actually is here in the United States.
Okay. I'm gonna look to challenge that point later in the debate. I mean, currently, I still have yet to be able to really truly assess it as being. You say gold rush. I mean, look. I'll get back to that point later because I have not done research on that subject in order to talk about it. But you talk about how, like, in some way, like, if we like legalize it and regulate all aspects of prostitution like we do with alcohol, it would sort of, from my understanding, you claim that it will mitigate the harm that accompanies it. You know, I personally cannot accept a policy prescription that agrees with this form of that agrees with this logic, because I can only see that the only result that can come about is violence against women. Normalizing the act of buying sex would also, in my view, debase men by assuming that they are entitled to access women's body for sexual gratification, just like alcoholics feel entitled to access alcohol for relieving of stress or whatever have you, or to have a good time. If paying for sex is normalized, then I believe every young boy will learn that women and girls are commodities to be bought and sold. This is not championing women. You made a claim earlier about how this is human rights. I mean, I don't understand how this champions human rights for women. If anything, it degrades women. It completely tells women that, hey, you're an entity that I can use outside of myself to get satisfaction. And so you are no longer someone that can be an equal mate alongside me, but someone that is inferior to me. Hence, I can use you. And I really don't see how this is a human rights issue on legalization. If legalization is adopted, it will not be empowered. It will be not be, it will not be empowering sex workers who will be the norm. It will be the millions of women and girls needed to fill the supply of bodies that an unlimited market of consumers will demand. Where do we think these young girls in the sex trade will come from? They will come from all over the world. Obviously, most victims today are girls. In this sex trafficking, though some boys are exploited too. It's simply naive to oppose sex trafficking, which I would assume you do of children and women, and at the same time supporting to support the decriminalization, the buyers who create the demand, and the pimps who profit from the supply of girls and women. I believe it is to the better to help women and girls avoid a life of prostitution and to deter men from buying sex acts. And I'm gonna pass it on to you, man.
Like I've been saying, there's no way to quench the demand from an economic standpoint. The demand is out there. There's no way to stop that. So that's why I'm saying, to stop this human trafficking, to stop this problem, we need to regulate this. We need to put this in an open market like alcohol, where we can regulate it. We know what's going on. We can stop the diseases. We can target the people who are trafficking children, the pimps in Nevada, and then under all these legalized systems, they are regulated as well. The government watches them. Women have a right to self-determinate. Everyone has a right to self-determination. It's not just women, men. There's plenty of men who are prostitutes. There's plenty of men who are gay. All that stuff. As far as them being degraded, they have a right to enjoy sex too. It's their body. They can do what they want. But really, the person who suffers the most here, who you're forgetting about, is a disabled person. In Czechoslovakia, their disabled people are actually able to see prostitutes, and it's most of them. The reason that they're contacting a prostitute is it's the only chance that they'll ever get to have sex is to contact a prostitute. Usually, it's their parents who call, and then these people they might not even be physically able. I mean, there's no other way for them to enjoy sex but to have a prostitute. So you're denying them that. And the thing is that humans are animals, and we do have a desire for sex. And somebody who is disabled, imagine being a man or woman who's disabled, and there's no one will have sex. It's impossible. I mean, you couldn't even have sex with someone. So this liberates that side. So it liberates both sides. There's the demand side, and the people. Let's face it, the men who are seeing these prostitutes or women or whatever, they're doing it because there's a reason. There's a reason that they're seeing them is what I'm trying to say. So when you say that you can't agree with the logic, I think it's your logic. Not your logic, Sebastian, but the kind of logic that you're suggesting here that creates these problems. Because if the government could regulate this and stop these things, they would. I mean, we have a huge problem here in Ohio. I'm sure it's really bad in New York, and you know what? They don't even enforce it anyway. I was in New York and I saw plenty of prostitutes everywhere. They're not even enforcing it. So it would be a lot better if they regulated it. I think that. So that's what you're missing. You're taking this from an authoritarian standpoint that has failed.
Look, now you made a comment about we're animals. I don't believe we're animals. I believe we're human beings. I believe we all have a purpose. I believe we have dignity, and it is this logic that you have that influences your conclusion on the basis that we should basically advertise this stuff. It's really your worldview and your perspective. I mean, because if you think that human beings are meaningless and human beings are animals and they don't and they have no true purpose and they have no superior dignity, hence so hence they can do whatever, and so like there is no like what I'm trying to say is that there is no like there's no standard. There was no standard by which to measure deviance. Everyone can determine it because animals cannot, like, when an animal kills an animal, it just kills the animal. So the animal doesn't have a conscience to know, hey, I just killed somebody. It was no, I killed that animal because I was hungry. I'm a carnivore. We don't operate like that. We're human beings. That's why there are laws in place that when you kill someone, you go to jail. And we're different from animals. You can consider yourself an animal all you want. And if you're going to use the Darwinian tool, which is what I believe it's influenced by, then you use that. But that's your perspective on yourself. That you're not speaking for myself or any human being that agrees with my logic on this issue. Now in regards to Nevada, I'm actually looking at some research as I'm talking to you. It seems to me like, as I'm trying to read this, that Nevada's counties are the pimps, pretty much, as they collect the taxes from the sales of women to men who buy them. Um, Again, I really can't, like, I really don't know much about the Nevada legalization. I wish we sort of like had a like it's really, I have limited time to really discuss it in whole because I really don't have much information about Nevada. But I can assert that if we schedule another debate where we just examine prostitution in Nevada, there should be a separate debate for this. I believe I can present a compelling case as to the deteriorating effects in Nevada. I would bet that the disease rates in Nevada are just completely, like, over the roof, like with regards to how many people with STDs, et cetera, et cetera. And not just that, I would also bet that the crime rate in regards to actual statistics of how much women are actually or people who actually
So okay, so I'm just going to go through your contentions one by one, and of course you're not really. I don't feel like you're answering my contentions, but that's okay. That's okay. Just want to point that out. First, you're kind of making you're making a moral. You're saying that because I believe that humans are animals, that they're immoral, but I really don't think this is about the carnality of mankind. So much. What I'm saying is that there's no way that this desire exists, this demand exists, no matter what. This was what I'm saying. I can't stop that. I'm not saying this has to go along with your values. And we want to talk about Nevada. Of course, Las Vegas is the most famous city in Nevada. Prostitution is actually illegal within the city limits. I say I'm only speaking for myself, but no, this is actually the opinion. It's of most libertarians and most feminists. It's actually a place where there's agreement, except and this actually goes to your next point. Even though I guess this isn't really a libertarian argument because I'm saying it should be regulated, but the feminists actually make kind of a libertarian argument here because they say that it should just be decriminalized for the reasons that you say. That usually a libertarian would say, like, well, it's woman, now the government becomes her pimp because they're charging her tax and all this other stuff, so just decriminalize it. But the thing is that there's no way to stop. The reason that I'm opposed to that is that I don't think that would stop the human trafficking aspect of it. It has to be like going to a liquor store is what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to glorify anyone. Like I said, like, I'm not trying to put them down either. I'm saying the people who need the service, there could be there's a reason for that, and one reason could be that they're disabled, and this is the only way for that person. I don't think that there's really a need to debate for a separate debate to show that it's a net negative or a net positive. What I'm trying to say is that it is a net positive, and yes, I have given more of these moral reasons for disabled people and all that sort of thing. But I'm not hearing uh, my contentions answered here.
Repeat one of your contentions. Just repeat one, so I can answer one. Because maybe it's because I lack clarity in what your contentions are. Just mention one, and I'll look to answer it.
Well, I'm saying that it will stop the human trafficking. How you're so you're saying you were both kind of saying that I don't like that way of thinking here, and what I'm saying is that it will stop the human trafficking. How is having prostitution illegal where it's below ground, where we don't know what's going on? How is that stopping human trafficking?
Okay, just because. Okay, so now you're making an assertion that just because you legalize it, in some way, sexual trafficking will no longer be underground. There's no basis to form this logic. There really isn't, because when you're if you were to legalize this now, let's say you're gonna legalize it in the United States, and in other countries it's illegal, right? It'll only be logical if you do it underground in other countries to get it into the United States where it is legal. So hence, I don't understand how you will stop it and stop it from being underground. That completely makes no sense to me, honestly, Julian. And you say it will not stop human trafficking. I mean, I mean, because where are you going to get it? Like, where are you possibly going to get all these people? I mean, and at some point, if you're going to legalize it and you're going to turn this into a major enterprise, you're going to a CEO who's money hungry and who wants to expand the service industry and hence expand the opportunity to people. They will, or expand the American dream of this new service industry, is going to want to expand it worldwide. And so you're going to want to recruit people worldwide who obviously they're going to basically look for the most sexually attractive women, or the women who seem more appealing, and they're going to look in areas where women are, and they're going to kidnap them, and they're going to do them underground to bring them into the United States through underground means, in order that they can now use them in the service industry and where they can be employed. And guess what? This means that you're going to have to go to the poorest countries in the world, like Haiti, like Jamaica, like Africa, and you're going to go to the poor sections, take the women from there, bring them underground, and bring them to the United States. I mean, you're not going to stop human trafficking. I mean, you can possibly maybe stop it. Like it will no longer be considered human trafficking in the United States because now it's illegal. Because now it's legal. But in other countries now, it'll still be happening, because you're gonna have to traffic these human beings into the United States in order where it's legal, so that now they can be used as sex objects. I mean, so if you're talking in the context of the United States, yeah, human trafficking won't be a thing anymore. But if you're talking in other countries where it's illegal, you'll still be trafficking human beings who possibly would not even want to be trafficked into the United States for sex. And even if they're unemployed and living in poverty, there are women out there who respect themselves enough, who would not want to be, who will not sell their bodies or be willing to sell their bodies for money, because they have dignity. They don't believe they're animals. They believe they're human beings with purpose, and there are other things that they can look to do in the United States, rather than selling their bodies. And think about contracts that be offered to them. There'll also be contracts. Say, hey, you got to do this for 8 years in order to get money, in order to maintain money. All this thing is nonsense.
I think it's really wrong too. When you say there are contracts and stuff, what you're talking about is indentured servitude. So that's basically slavery. That's still slavery, which is legal, and what you're talking about is still illegal. But I think the big thing here is Sebastian, is that you're just not accounting for the laws of supply and demand. Because just ask your hero, Alan Dershowitz. He thinks that if prostitution were legal, the police could do things like stop terrorism. So it's a waste of resources. There's a real economic debate here through supply and demand, and this is what goes go, and this is why I say that it should be regulated, actually, because when you say that, well, capitalism is going to exploit this, it actually is because of supply and demand. So that's why I really think that it needs to be regulated, and that's the only way that I know to stop human trafficking. And I am talking about the United States. In this case, I think it's in general this kind of plan that I'm laying out. I just go ahead. So I do have the 5 contention points, that stops human trafficking, it liberates the workers, it controls disease, and helps the disabled, and that's a victimless crime. So it helps all these things. Economically, it's not just moral. It's just, I don't think you really understand. It's because there is no way, because again, there is no way to stop the demands, Sebastian. Only thing we can do is regulate the supply side. That's the way that I see this. And I think that's really what it comes, just like alcohol. I think that's really what it comes down to here. And then, so that's the point that you're missing.
Okay. You just want to regulate the supply side. I mean, just because you legalize something, and just because the law says it's okay, and you like create a supply, there's no correlation in how it affects society in a positive way. Let's take, for instance, cocaine. I mean, if we were to legalize cocaine, and we were to legalize other substances, you cannot expect that the health, like, people will have longer life expectancies, because there are negatives associated with drugs and alcohol, and the results can expand to even, going out driving and like drunk driving and dying because you were drunk, and your reasoning was darkened. In the same sense, with if you legalize prostitution, just because you legalize it, that doesn't mean that it will be a net benefit for society. And you're talking 50 states. You're not talking within one state. You're talking in 50 states. You're talking all over the United States. Hence, now, if you were to do this, people now can become more receptive to getting sexually transmitted diseases. It's more, you could be more prevalent. Not just that, you can expect a deterioration in the family, where now you have a breakdown of the family. You have wives, like the marriage rates will decrease. Divorce rates will expand. More like there's a greater chance now that kids will be raised without without two parents in the home, without a father, without a good example of what male responsibility is. I mean, you will completely destroy Western civilization with this propaganda of legalizing prostitution. And for the record, Alan Dershowitz is not my hero. I just used him as a source of reference for the Israel debate. Stop being a jerk off, man. You're just being a clown right now. But you're really funny, man. But no, back to the case. No, I mean, I get the point. You do have to have some humor. You have to have some humor. It can't be so tense. But but now, yeah, continue with my point now. Yeah, you will completely break down the family, man, and you cannot expect males to have a strong basis of morale on how to treat women or how to relate to women. It's basically, hey, this woman is a woman and she's a sex object. This is basically what you're communicating. And I can basically assert right now that in this country, there are women out there that will be offended and appalled by the idea that you will see them as a sex object for the rest of their lives. The meaning of women's life is more important.
I think that women have a right to have sex too, Sebastian. And for you to talk about male morale, the thing is that there are men out there who are unable to find a partner, and statistically, well, I don't want to make this a debate about feminism, but statistically, women are, for obvious reasons, women are more likely to be sexually active than men in the first place. So there are more men who are sexually inactive. out there. But going back to the first thing you're saying, you're going to talk about the supply side, and the thing is, I think if you could regulate the demand too. Like, so say somebody had an STD, no, it's a crime for them to go see a prostitute, so they can't spread this around either. It's regulated. So I am talking about both sides. And I am saying that it's a net positive. I list many reasons. Of course, economically, you have the taxes to regulation, like you have alcohol, but of course, there's always better reasons than that, of course. And that's, of course, the net positive, which is really its contention point. So it stops human trafficking, it liberates the workers, it controls disease and narcotics. I'm not saying people should use narcotics, but in the other debates, not you, but the other debate, the guys said that they're using drugs in the brothels. Well, that's because it's decriminalized in that country. I'm saying it should be regulated, and we'll know what's going on there, just like we do in Nevada. I'm saying that will help the disabled, so it's a net positive for them. And it's a victimless crime. So, just like, of course, I was just kidding. So just like Alan Dershowitz would say, there's other things. There's better things the police could be doing. They could be trying to catch a terrorist, somebody who's violent, a terrorist, or somebody like that. And just because people can see a prostitute doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Like, just because people drink this, that doesn't mean that they're going to drive drunk. It doesn't mean that the prohibition of alcohol works. The prohibition of alcohol started right here in Westerville, not far from me in Westerville, Ohio. So I think you're talking about a slippery. You're given a slippery slope here. It's got, where you're saying that all these things are going to fall apart. We can't quench the demand for this at all, Sebastian. So again, this goes back to supply and demand, and you're not answering for supply and demand. You're not telling me how these things are going to solve the supply and the demand issue here.
So you're asserting that supply and demand. Okay, supply and demand. All right. Just because you increase the supply of let's say marijuana or cocaine, that doesn't mean that you will just because you increase the supply of substance, because that's what in essence is like saying that. I'm just using a comparison here. Just because you increase the supply of a drug, that doesn't mean that you will stop people. No, what am I? Okay, hold on. Just because you increase the supply, just because you increase the supply of a harmful drug, that doesn't mean that you will stop people. That doesn't mean that you will not stop people from not basically going out to use it, like or for that matter, they will not see the truthfulness in the fact that it is harmful, because you're now creating it as a more of a supply, and so you can expect more people to die as a result. Hence, in the same way, just because you increase the supply of the thing, I mean, and because there is a demand, so you increase the supply of it, and or you regulate it, or for that matter, if just because you regulate the supply of sex, that doesn't mean that you're gonna somehow lower the demand for it. I mean, you're only gonna increase the demand, and again, the correlation will be you increase the demand for sex, because now people are gonna want sex, and so if they can't afford sex from a prostitute, they're gonna go out and rape people. So you're gonna create a demand for people now to feel that they can achieve sex by all means necessary, and so you break all boundaries and restrictions that will be in effect if we do not legalize prostitution, because if we do not so in states like Texas, prostitution is not legal. So because it's not legal, yeah, people have high demand, like they want it. There are a lot of people who want sex and who would want prostitution, but because the supply is low because of the laws of that land, people now, if they need sex, there's a sanction that comes to mind if they were to look to engage in it in another way. So in other words, you also, again, this is a disease issue. I'm looking at this as a health issue, and also To address your disabled point, I want to address your disabled point. But my time is running out, and I just want to just pass it all to you. I hope you pass it back fast.
Go ahead.
Great. So you talk about it helps disables. This assumed that every disabled person in the United States and around the world is sexually hungry. I have a handicapped uncle that lives with me, and he is a disabled handicapped uncle. He has a speech impediment, hence only I can understand him and my family because we're used to him. But most people like yourself will not understand him. He is disabled. He does not crave for sex 24/7. Now, don't get me wrong. He can probably see something here and there that gives him sexual desires, but I do not assert that in his mind. If he were to have, like, because he also gets benefits. If we were to say, hey, Uncle Mako, do you want to use your money that you get from the government? Would you want to use this money to buy prostitution services? I highly doubt that he would say, oh yeah, I would want that, because his morale, again, that's why this is a moral issue too. This is not just an issue of to focus on legal means. This is a moral law. This is how you interpret the world. This is how you interpret human beings. This is how you view human beings. He has a worldview that his morale is this is wrong. This is completely wrong. This should not be legal. And so hence I'm gonna pass it off.
Okay, we got it. You did because only have 30 seconds. Have you ever asked him? Because the thing, like I said, this is kind of interesting. You brought this up because, as I mentioned, in Czechoslovakia, this is actually where this is popular and this is going on. It's actually subsidized there as well. So they actually give. This is actually part of the benefits the person would receive. And I mean, but seriously, have you ever asked them? I mean, how would you know? I believe that just by being alive, a person would have these desires. And I mean, would he tell you? I mean, I'll post an article about this Czechoslovakia situation where the mother is the person contacting the prostitutes, and she's telling the media things like that that the disabled person's unable to masturbate and stuff like this. I mean, it's his mother. Whose mother would even know that? So I mean, so have you asked them? That's my question to pass back. What does it have to do? Just because he's gay.